The movie begins in the year 1536, where there is an alchemist named Uberto who successfully escapes from something called the Inquisition. His escape brings him to the country of Mexico, where he dedicates his life to perfecting a device that he names Kronos. This device contains a mysterious insect and intricate internal mechanisms, which together produce an unknown substance. Moving to the night in 1937, more than 4 centuries after the creation of Kronos, a building collapses and reveals a man with pale skin. This man is none other than Uberto himself, who is still alive until this moment, thanks to the Kronos device that turns out to be able to grant eternal life. Unfortunately, a fatal stab wound from the accident takes his life, and he finally dies. An investigation is conducted, and all of Uberto's belongings are classified. But what is surprising is that they find out that Uberto has been holding someone captive and taking their blood. His house and assets are then auctioned, but the Kronos device is not found and is not on the inventory list, so, as a result, the immortality device is considered non-existent. 59 years later, an old merchant named Jesus Gree sees a suspicious person exploring his antique shop. This incident disturbs his time with his granddaughter, named Aurora. So Jesus approaches the suspicious visitor, who leaves without saying a single word, and finally, Jesus becomes confused. After checking the object that makes that suspicious person curious, Jesus finds out that the object is an angel statue. When Jesus continues playing with Aurora, an unpleasant incident happens, which turns out to be that many cockroaches emerge from the hollow eyes of the statue. Quickly, Aurora drives away the cockroaches. Not long after, Jesus examines the statue and finds an unexpected treasure inside it, and it turns out to be Kronos, the device that Uberto hid in his angel statue, which is now in Jesus' antique shop. While looking outside, Jesus observes a suspicious person calling someone again, who turns out to be his boss, Guardia, from a company. This phone call reports the discovery of the angel statue at Jesus' shop, which prompts Guardia to immediately meet his seriously ill uncle, Dieter, with the newly found information. Dieter really wants to get the angel statue that contains Kronos, so he asks Guardia to take it, even though he is initially hesitant because of his uncle's obsession. However, Guardia changes his mind after Dieter shows him Uberto's diary, which hints at the promise of eternal life. Guardia then goes to Jesus' antique shop to buy the statue, without realizing that Kronos is no longer hidden inside it. When Jesus prepares the item, Guardia kindly interacts with Aurora, sharing chewing gum and showing a friendly attitude toward the child. After finishing selling his statue, Jesus, who is unsure about the golden device in front of him, decides to clean Kronos. When he holds the device and turns its knob, the device suddenly becomes active, and finally his hand gets stabbed. In pain, Jesus releases the device forcibly, causing his hand to bleed as if the device had bitten him. When the device's legs return to their original position, Jesus warns Aurora to keep her distance and assures her that Jesus is okay. They then return home, where Jesus meets his wife, Mercedes, who is teaching her friends to dance. Seeing her husband injured, she excuses herself from her friends to treat Jesus' hand wound, but he lies by saying that he fell on glass when asked about his injury. That night, Jesus starts experiencing strange sensations, marked by thirst and dehydration. He drinks a lot of water from the kitchen and finds raw meat in the refrigerator. An unexplainable desire to drink blood surges inside him, but he can resist his urge because he feels that swallowing raw blood makes him disgusted. Besides that, he starts feeling constant itching in his wound, so it pushes Jesus to scratch it with scissors and even bite it. This makes him realize that these are signs his body needs Kronos. So he gives in to the temptation, and finally, he uses Kronos again. Meanwhile, Aurora hears a commotion outside her room and dares to investigate it, where she sees her grandfather using Kronos on the stairs, making her worried about his condition. Despite her worries, Jesus assures her that her grandfather is okay. The next day, Jesus feels his condition has improved, where he looks younger, healthier, with fading wrinkles and thicker hair. Taking advantage of the opportunity, he shaves his beard and surprises his wife with his new appearance. Jesus then realizes that Aurora is not around, so he asks about her whereabouts, but his wife does not know where Aurora is. Therefore, Jesus goes to his shop, only to find out that his shop has been ransacked. When sitting there sadly, Jesus finds Guardia's business card, which was intentionally left on the table. This makes Jesus suspect that Guardia has ransacked his shop, so Jesus goes to his company while carrying a box, where Guardia greets him from above and does not admit that he ransacked his shop. Guardia then escorts Jesus to meet Dieter, where they start a conversation about Kronos, and Dieter has extensive knowledge about the device. Dieter then introduces Uberto's diary, revealing that the device relies on insects, and these insects have extraordinary abilities, such as regenerating and even still being alive after being buried for centuries. Confused, Jesus questions why Dieter is revealing all this information. Dieter is actually on the brink of death, so he reveals his desire to obtain eternal life, and he really wants to get the device. Suddenly, Dieter snatches the box that Jesus brought, and when he tries to grab it back, Dieter notices the bandage on Jesus' hand and concludes that Jesus has used Kronos. Jesus tries to explain that it was an accident, but Dieter becomes angry and orders Jesus to leave this place. As Jesus leaves his presence, Dieter opens the box, and it turns out that the contents are a padlock inside it. This makes Dieter realize that he has been tricked, so Dieter mocks him through the company's speaker, asserting that only he possesses knowledge about Kronos' rules and will never reveal it. Upon returning home with heavy sweating and difficulty breathing, Jesus wants to use Kronos again, but it turns out the device is not in its place. He immediately suspects that Aurora has taken it after witnessing the incident the night before. Jesus heads to the roof, where he searches through his granddaughter's toy box, but Kronos remains difficult to find. Finally, Jesus finds Aurora hiding behind a blanket and persuades her to return Kronos. He assures Aurora that as long as they stay together, Jesus will be safe. Aurora wants to hear this, so she is willing to hand over Kronos, whom she hid inside a teddy bear. That night, Jesus' family attends a New Year's gathering in their community, and Jesus has used Kronos before leaving. When he feels its effects in the middle of the party, he becomes disturbed when he sees a man having a nosebleed, which triggers his thirst for blood once again. Therefore, Jesus excuses himself to follow the man to the toilet, where Jesus secretly tries to lick the blood that spilled from the man at the sink. However, Guardia enters the toilet and delivers a quick kick to Jesus' head, and finally, he faints. Guardia then takes Jesus to another location and commits violence, venting his frustration due to his uncle's obsession with Kronos. Guardia questions Jesus about his purpose with Kronos, and he reveals his understanding of the device. Guardia considers his explanation nonsensical, and Jesus begs Guardia to release him, but the violence continues. Finally, Guardia places Jesus inside a car, then pushes it to fall off a cliff, and finally, the car is destroyed. As for Jesus, his condition becomes dying, with feelings of fear to be able to stay alive from this accident. The next day, Jesus' lifeless body is delivered to the funeral home, where an employee named Tito is responsible for preparing it. He is very enthusiastic about his work, applying makeup to Jesus' wounds and trying to make him look like he is sleeping peacefully. However, after learning that Jesus will be cremated, Tito's interest fades and he becomes angry with his boss. Meanwhile, at the company, Dieter summons Guardia to the room, where he uses his cane to hit Guardia, expressing contempt for his actions toward Jesus. Guardia denies having done anything wrong and says that Jesus' death was caused by a vehicle accident. Dieter asks if there is something that stabbed Jesus' heart, but Guardia is not sure. Angrily, Dieter curses at Guardia, considering him useless. Dieter gives his nephew one last chance, ordering Guardia to ensure Jesus' death and take Kronos. Guardia obeys this, so he keeps watching Jesus, even pinching his nose to make sure that Jesus has died. A few days later, Jesus' corpse returns to the funeral home to be cremated. But when preparing for it, Tito experiences technical difficulties, which prompts him to enter the basement to make repairs. When he returns, he does not realize that Jesus is no longer inside his coffin. Not long after that, Guardia arrives and asks to see Jesus' body for the last time. When Tito tells him that the coffin is already inside the crematorium, Guardia feels certain that Jesus has indeed died, and finally, Guardia smiles. Without his knowledge, Jesus is still alive in a horrifying condition, where he struggles through the cold night, even having to search for something in the trash, and finds a newspaper that contains news of his death. This makes him think about contacting Mercedes, so Jesus calls home, but when he mentions his name, Mercedes suddenly hangs up the phone and considers it a prank call. Aurora apparently hears that brief phone call because their phone lines are connected to each other. Upon Jesus' return home, his granddaughter welcomes him and offers a clean towel. Then they go up to the roof, where Aurora empties a box of toys to make a temporary resting place for Jesus. He once again utilizes Kronos, hoping to regain his strength and heal his wounds. However, when sunlight enters through the roof gap, the light scorches Jesus' skin as a sign that he has turned into a vampire. In panic, he gets into the toy box, and finally, he sleeps when Aurora closes its cover. That night, Jesus wakes up and sees his granddaughter waiting for him again, where she is busy drawing on the wall. Jesus then tries to write a letter to Mercedes, but after several attempts, he is unable to express his feelings well. In the end, he hides part of the truth, telling Mercedes about his survival after the accident without revealing the reason behind it. He promises to take responsibility for his vampire effects, hoping that if he succeeds in stopping it, Mercedes will accept him again, regardless of his appearance. After the letter is finished, Jesus entrusts it to Aurora, ordering her to deliver it to her grandmother. Jesus then goes to the company, intending to confront him and reveal the truth about Kronos. To his surprise, it turns out Aurora secretly followed him from home. So he scolds her for secretly following him from behind, but he realizes that Aurora has brought Kronos with her. With no other choice, Jesus keeps his granddaughter close to ensure her safety. Taking advantage of Aurora's small body, they access Dieter's room through the food window, opening it from the inside to let Jesus in. Inside, Jesus starts searching for Uberto's diary secretly, while Aurora observes the surroundings. Without their knowledge, Dieter wakes up from his sleep and observes their activities. When Aurora gives a box that she found to her grandfather, Jesus recognizes Uberto's diary inside it. But when he reads its content carefully, he realizes that the information he is looking for is not there. Suddenly, Dieter comes to announce that Kronos has affected Jesus, making him immortal. But Jesus demands an explanation regarding his deteriorating skin, but Dieter refuses to answer directly and chooses to peel off his rotten skin directly, thus revealing the pale layer inside. Dieter then secretly calls Guardia to his room and gives Jesus a mirror to see for himself his appearance, which has changed. Dieter reveals that Jesus has been reborn, but now he will depend on human blood to maintain his eternal existence. Destroying Kronos will result in his death, so Dieter warns him before Jesus does it. Dieter proposes that they can share immortality, but Jesus refuses because what he wants is a peaceful life. This makes Dieter smile. He wants to reveal a way for Jesus to be able to die without destroying the device. But Jesus is asked to give his Kronos first. When Jesus hands over the device, Dieter suddenly stabs a knife toward his chest, nearly hitting his heart. As a result, a fight breaks out until Dieter manages to pin Jesus to the floor. But suddenly, Aurora grabs Dieter's cane to hit his head, and finally, he faints. Jesus takes this opportunity to stand up, urging Aurora to escape with him. However, Jesus is faced with Dieter's very heavy bleeding, so Jesus cannot restrain himself, and finally, he sucks his blood. Not long after that, Guardia comes from the elevator, so to avoid capture, they immediately hide. What is surprising when finding his uncle's bloodied body is that Guardia expresses joy rather than concern because he feels his pent-up frustration toward his uncle's obsession. Therefore, Guardia places his foot on Dieter's neck to break it, and finally, Dieter dies. Seeing Guardia's attention distracted for a moment, Jesus takes the opportunity to hit him with Dieter's cane. Jesus then lets Aurora escape first, while he himself faces Guardia, until they engage in a fierce fight. And finally, the fight forces Jesus to push Guardia to fall from the roof. Seeing that Guardia has died, Aurora quickly acts by utilizing Kronos on her unconscious grandfather. After he regains consciousness, Jesus starts tearing off his skin that is starting to deteriorate. But when he sees Aurora's fearful gaze, Jesus feels an increasingly strong desire to drink blood. But he manages to reject that desire. Then he destroys Kronos with a stone, and finally, the device is destroyed. As a result, Jesus' condition starts dying, so he repeats his name endlessly. Refusing to die as a monster. Contrary to what Dieter told him before, it turns out Jesus has not died. Nevertheless, he decides to return home, lie down in bed, and wait for the sunlight to shine on his body. The movie ends with Jesus accepting his fate without complaining or regretting, because Aurora and Mercedes are by his side. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification so you don't miss the latest recaps.